Did you enlarge my chest, human? Viren's voice cuts through the smoky air of the hidden outpost like a blade. She stands in the center of the cramped, metallic room, her emerald skin sheened with perspiration, her impossibly lush figure heaving with each breath. The lights flicker, half powered by a failing generator. Sparks pop from a console Dax had tried to rig for extra perimeter sensors. He whirls around, half crouched behind a metallic crate, plasma pistol in hand. His gaze snaps to Viren's chest, because the accusation points him there, and he sees the way her bust strains at the sleek alien top she's wearing. It looks uncomfortably tight, as if she's swelling by the minute. His mouth goes dry. What are you even talking about? He snaps back, adrenaline still pumping from the perimeter alarms. I didn't do anything to you. I've never even seen you before. She stalks forward in a swirl of sweet, alien scent, and he fights the urge to step back. She's intimidating in a way he's never encountered, not just because of her appearance. Those long, toned limbs, the black hair that falls in shining waves, the way her eyes glimmer in the flickering light, but because she seems absolutely convinced that he's to blame. There's an electric current of fury in her gaze, and something else too, confusion, maybe embarrassment. The tips of her ears have turned a darker shade, near the temples, glowing faintly in pulses. He can't help but stare. Her voice comes out low, throbbing with a deeply felt anger. Something you did changed my body. I woke up and this. She gestures at herself, and for the first time, her confidence falters. It's bigger. Fuller. And it tingles. You're the only outsider I've come in contact with. So tell me, what did you inject into me? Some human hormone? Or was it a deliberate procedure? He holsters his pistol, holding out a hand in a vaguely pacifying gesture. There's no chance in hell he's going to let his guard down completely, but he doesn't need to escalate yet. Look, Lady Viren, or whatever your name is, I have no idea what's going on. I've been in this base for 6 days, I've barely slept, and I have absolutely not messed with your body. In fact, I didn't even know you existed until about 10 seconds ago, so… He's cut off by a violent shudder that runs through the outpost. The lights dim for a moment, everything goes black, and then a flickering emergency glow drenches the corridors in a harsh red. Somewhere outside, the security drones must have reactivated. Viren's pupils dilate. She darts a glance toward the metal door behind Dax. Why would you sabotage my vessel, then? She hisses. She's trying to keep her voice low, but in the hush that follows the outpost system's flickering, he can hear her breathing. He can hear the rasp of her clothes, the subtle vibration in her voice. She's wound up tight, like a cornered predator. Part of him wants to snap at her, part of him wants to quell her fears, and part of him can't stop staring at the curve of her chest. He's never seen a woman shaped quite like that. The shimmer of her green skin under the emergency lights only intensifies the effect. Sabotage your vessel? I didn't even know there was an alien ship in the area until your frantic signal lit up my radar 2 hours ago. I was planning on heading out there, see if it was a threat or not, but next thing I know, you're breaking down my door and ranting about chest enlargement. So no, I didn't sabotage anything, he says. He feels tension in his jaw from how tightly he's clenching his teeth. As for your chest, I'm sorry it's giving you trouble, but that's got nothing to do with me. She sneers, but there's a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Our medical technology is advanced enough to detect any human meddling. I sensed a foreign presence in my system when I woke from stasis. You were the only human signature in range. Logic states that you're responsible. He shakes his head, letting out a low, humorless chuckle. Or maybe you're scanning me with broken instruments, because I'm telling you, I'm not some mad scientist splicing alien DNA. I'm just a guy trying to avoid the rest of the galaxy for a while. She opens her mouth to retort, but a warning siren blares through the base's corridor, short and shrill. Dax's eyes go wide. He leaps for the console, but it's flickering offline. He tries the manual override, punching in some codes. Damn it! The security drones must have locked on to a heat signature. Could be you or that wreck you crashed in. If they decide you're a threat, they'll open fire. Viren tenses, hands curling into fists, then relaxes them. Dax notices the glow at her cheeks intensify, pulsing in faint bands across her collarbones. We'll have to move, she says, voice a hushed urgency. My ship is irreparable. I must find a place to patch into any functioning comm array or else I'll be stranded here. And those drones are going to kill me on sight? Yeah, he admits, flicking off a stubborn console and scanning the battered supply crates near the far wall. He rummages inside one, pulling out a battered handheld device that might still connect to the outpost's satellite link. I guess you're stuck with me. You sure you want to keep blaming me for your chest issues? Her eyes narrow. You humans are known for your manipulations. But her tone is less certain. She glances down at herself, at her newly grown curves, and he sees a flush of what looks like shame, or maybe embarrassment. If you truly had nothing to do with it, I need to figure out what did. My physiology can't handle random transformations. My clan would see it as a sign of... She presses her lips together, refusing to finish that thought. He lifts a brow. A sign of what? She pivots away, refusing to answer. You have a plan to get us out of here or not? He hates the way she flicks away his question, but there's no time to argue. Sure. We'll grab what we can, slip through the corridors while the drones are scanning the perimeter. There's a lower vent that leads out to the forest. We can get some cover among the trees until the drones cycle back. Then we'll try to access the comm tower that's about half a mile from here, see if it's still functional. You okay with that? She casts him a suspicious look but nods. Fine. Let's do it. Then, softer. I just hope the cause of my condition isn't something that will persist. This is already uncomfortable. He hesitates, sees her expression, and, for a moment, feels a twinge of empathy. Look, if it's a medical emergency, I can try to help. I've got some basic training, but I'm no doc. Let's survive first, handle your chest problem next. Deal? She purses her lips. Deal, human. She almost spits the word, but he catches her glancing away, as if she's conflicted. And my name is Viren. He nods, trying not to notice the heavy press of her newly enlarged chest against the thin fabric of her outfit. Dax. Now come on, Viren, keep your head down. He holds the handheld device, toggles a few switches, and leads her into a dim corridor. Their footsteps echo along the metal floor. She's silent, lithe, moving with a precision that makes him guess she's had combat training or something close to it. He wants to ask 100 questions. Why does she think humans can enlarge her chest? Why is she here in the first place? Is she one of the rumored outer colony species that doesn't mix well with Terran DNA? But the flickering red lights and the danger of patrolling drones keep him focused. They turn a corner, and two spherical machines hover near the ceiling, scanning with bright blue beams. Dax jerks Viren behind a row of pipes. She nearly crashes into him, her chest pressing into his back, and he feels a sudden, intense warmth. The subtle friction of her body through the clothes sends a disconcerting jolt through him. He tries to ignore it, tries to focus on the danger in front of them. Viren hisses close to his ear. That's them? He nods, turning his head slightly. Her face is inches away, eyes trained on the drones. He can see the faint luminescent patterns that flicker across her temples when she breathes. Yes. We have to wait until they move on. If they skin you, they'll register unknown biometrics and probably open fire. He tenses, waiting. The drones shift position, scanning the corridor with methodical sweeps. One passes close enough that Dax can hear the whir of its engines. He presses Viren tighter against the pipes, feeling the fierce tension in her body. She trembles for a moment, and he's not sure if it's anger or fear. She scowls at him, forcing a whisper. Don't get any ideas about my condition. This forced proximity is all that's saving us. No more, no less. He swallows, ignoring the flutter in his chest. Don't flatter yourself, lady. He almost regrets the words as soon as they leave his mouth, because he can see her jaw clench in a mixture of rage and wounded pride. She opens her mouth to retort, but he grabs her arm and motions for silence. The drone drifts past them, scanning. Then, after a few tense seconds, it continues down the corridor. They wait, hearts pounding, until the beeping grows distant. With caution, they slip out from behind the pipes and pick their way through the corridor. The vents are at the far end. Dax signals for Viren to follow, kneeling down to pry open the vent cover. She stands guard, arms stiff, glancing over her shoulder. He tries not to notice the way her chest still rises and falls with shallow, anxious breaths. After a minute's worth of straining and cursing, he gets the grate off. He hears Viren let out a hiss. Another drone's coming from behind us. He slides into the vent, gestures for her to follow. Go, go! She drops down, head first, slithering in a lithe motion that betrays her athletic instincts. Dax can't help but be impressed. Then he realizes the vent is narrower than he remembered, and her body is pressed all along his. His own breath catches. She's incredibly warm, her alien skin nearly scorching against him in the enclosed space. She inhales sharply. It's tight. She squirms, which does nothing to help his focus. He grits his teeth and pulls them forward, inch by inch, trying not to think about the curves grinding along his torso. They make it about 20 feet through the vent, the metal scraping their elbows, dust and grime clinging to them. Dax stops to check a side vent, hoping it leads outside. He kicks at it tentatively. It seems jammed. Viren shifts behind him, her breath coming in hot puffs against the back of his neck. You sure you know where we're going? She mutters. She sounds more breathless than he would have expected. Maybe she's exhausted or the transformation is taking a toll on her. Dax tries to keep his voice calm. Yes. Unless the structural layout changed. This vent should lead outside the perimeter. But if it's damaged... He gives the vent a harder kick. It budges, letting in a sliver of moonlight from beyond. There we go, he mumbles, bracing his shoulder against it. Help me push. She presses forward with surprising strength. He feels her palms against his spine. The vent cover snaps loose, clanging to the ground outside. A breeze ruffles Dax's hair, carrying scents of forest damp and nighttime hush. He slides out and lands in a crouch. Viren follows swiftly, landing beside him, her posture cat-like, ready for a threat. For a moment, they both soak in the fresh air. The forest beyond the outpost is dark, thick with tall, twisted trees and dense underbrush. A million tiny insects hum in the air, and overhead, 2 of the planet's moons shine. Dax hears distant mechanical whirs. The drones are still searching. He glances at Viren. In the moonlight, her skin glows faintly, and for the first time, he sees just how tight her outfit is. It's not only her chest that's changed. There's a slight flush across her collarbones that pulses in time with her breathing. You okay? He murmurs, adjusting his gear. She sets her jaw, nodding once. I'm fine. It's just, my body doesn't normally react like this. The swelling, the warmth. It's unnatural. I still can't believe you're not responsible. He shrugs, hating the small twinge of guilt that arises, even though he's innocent. I swear I didn't do anything. Maybe it's something environmental. Or your stasis pod malfunctioned. She gives him a hard stare, then exhales, as if acknowledging the possibility. Fine. Let's assume you're innocent. What now? He tucks his handheld device into a pouch. We find the Calm Tower. It's half a mile east. We'll get you a signal, see if you can hail your people. Then maybe we figure out your chest thing. She closes her eyes as if reciting a mantra. When she opens them again, there's a flash of determination. Lead on, human! They move into the forest, picking their way along hidden paths. Dax tries to keep the noise down, scanning for any sign of the drones overhead. Viren's footsteps are almost silent, but he can sense her tension. At times, her breathing hitches, and he notices she adjusts her top, as if it's growing increasingly restrictive. He wonders if it's painful or just awkward. He wonders if she's in danger from this condition. He's about to ask, but she cuts him off. If you keep looking at my chest, I'll assume you're analyzing further modifications. His face heats. I'm not analyzing. I'm worried about you. She stops, spinning on him so quickly he nearly collides with her. She stands there with parted lips, green skin luminous in the moonlight, eyes searching his face. You're worried about me. The sincerity in her voice catches him off guard. His bravado falters for a moment. Yeah, well, look, you've got weird swelling, and from the way you're breathing, it can't be comfortable. That's all. Let's just keep moving, okay? She studies him for another heartbeat, lips curving slightly. There's almost a flicker of warmth in her gaze. But then her expression hardens again. Fine. We'll talk about it later. Let's go. They continue in silence for a while, the forest alive with nocturnal creatures skittering in the darkness. Dax wonders if she can sense them more acutely with her alien biology. She's alert, scanning the shadows with every step. He leads the way, occasionally referencing a small compass he carries for these backwater worlds. The tension between them is thick, a swirl of suspicion and strange attraction. He can't help but glance back sometimes, catching the shape of her silhouette and the taut set of her lips. After 20 minutes, the terrain starts to slope upward. He sees a cluster of tall, slender structures through the canopy. That's where the calm tower should be. But something feels off. The air is too still. He holds up a hand for Viren to halt, and she obeys instantly, all coiled readiness. He crouches, motions her close. She leans in, and the heat of her body is a tangible pressure. I don't like this quiet, he whispers. Could be a trap or a perimeter around the tower. She breathes softly against his ear. Let me check. Before he can ask how, she closes her eyes, drawing in a slow, measured inhale. It's as if she's tasting the air. When she exhales, her skin flickers with faint luminescence along her arms. I sense multiple mechanical presences. Stationary. Possibly drones set to guard the tower. He raises a brow. You can sense that? That's handy. She snorts. It's standard for my species. The electromagnetic pulses those machines give off are easy to detect. But if we're dealing with more advanced human technology, they might have stealth protocols. We have to be careful. He nods. Then we move slowly. If they're posted at the tower, we'll need a diversion or a stealth approach. We can't just waltz in. She's about to respond, but a flicker of pain crosses her face. She clamps a hand over her chest, and her eyes widen. Dax instinctively grabs her arm. Hey, what's wrong? She grimaces. It's happening again. It's like a pulse of heat inside my body. My chest feels like it's swelling further. It's so distracting. I can't. She forces a sharp breath, tries to steady herself. I've never heard of such a reaction. Could it be the planet? Something in the atmosphere? He glances around, but the forest is too dark to spot anything unusual. It could be, or it could be a side effect of your stasis failing. Or some weird alien virus in the region. I don't know. But if you need to rest, we can find cover. Her jaw sets. No. We keep going. I refuse to let this condition best me. She pulls away from his support, though he can feel her trembling slightly. Show me the path. He admires her resilience despite himself. Follow close, but watch for motion sensors. They'll be near the ground or in the treetops. He leads her around a clump of brush, then up a slope over damp stones. Each step, they pass more twisted tree roots that arch above the ground like serpents. The canopy thickens, and the night chirps grow louder. All the while, he can sense Viren's shallow breathing behind him. He can practically feel the heat radiating off her skin whenever they're forced to stand close. Something about it ignites a spark inside him. He's no stranger to attraction, but this is different. It's heavier, more dangerous. Like a force neither of them fully understands. They crest a small ridge, and the tower emerges in the clearing below. It's tall, ringed by a small chain-link fence and a yard of flattened dirt. A cluster of solar panels sits near the base, angled toward the faint moonlight. Dax curses softly when he spots the glint of metallic drones parked around it. There are at least 3, maybe 4. He mutters, pointing them out to Vierin. She nods, scanning with narrowed eyes. I sense 4. One is behind that storage shed. Their scanning range must overlap the entire clearing. We can't get close without being tagged. He rubs a hand over his stubble, thinking. I've got a small EMP charge, but it'll only knock out 2 at best. The others might call for reinforcements. She frowns. If we can isolate a single drone, could we hijack it? Use it to scramble the others' comms? He looks at her in surprise. That's not a bad idea. But it's risky. We need to physically tap into it. That means I have to get close. I'll create a distraction. She offers, then makes a face as if the words leave a bitter taste. Though I'm not sure how well I can fight with this affliction. Still, I can draw them away. He shakes his head. Drawing them away might get you killed. Those drones are top tier. They have ballistic capabilities. One direct hit, and you're done. She flushes with indignation, the glow along her temples brightening. I'm not some frail creature. My reflexes are faster than yours. He exhales slowly. Fine, but let's plan it carefully. You lead a small commotion on the eastern side of the clearing, keep out of their line of fire. I'll wait near that large cluster of rocks to the north. When one drone peels off to investigate, I'll sneak up, sabotage it, and see if I can override the others. She hesitates, placing a hand over her chest. He notices again how tight her top has become. A pang of concern ripples through him. You sure you can handle it? You look like you're in pain. Her expression is fierce, determined. I can handle it. Just don't fail me, or I'll come after you next. He half smiles, a dark, wry expression. Wouldn't dream of it. He slides away from her, moving slowly down the slope with practiced stealth. She circles around to the east, using the trees for cover. He catches one last glimpse of her shimmering green skin as she slips through the branches. Then he positions himself behind a jagged boulder, close enough to see the drones. He crouches, counting them, waiting for Vierin's move. The forest goes silent for a moment, as if holding its breath. Finally, a sudden commotion, a burst of movement near the eastern fence. The drones were in agitation, scanning the area. Dax hears an alien war cry, sharp and wild. He can't help but grin at her sheer bravado. One of the drones peels off from the group, heading east to investigate. Perfect. Dax waits until it's clear of the others, then creeps forward, sliding into the open. He moves quick but low, sticking to the shadows. The drone hovers a few feet off the ground, scanning for heat signatures. He times his approach, leaps, and catches hold of one of its metal arms. The machine whirls in alarm, rotating wildly. He wrestles with it, jamming a small interface spike into its control panel. Sparks fly. The drone's lights flicker, and it tries to shake him off. Come on, he mutters, pressing a code into his handheld device. The drone's thrusters sputter. He feels an energy surge under his hands. Then, with a final beep, it goes limp, hovering at minimal thrust. Dax scrambles to keep it from crashing to the ground. Okay, got you. He rigs the device to the drone's CPU, scanning for the command protocol that might link to the others. He can hear blasts in the distance, some kind of energy weapon. His heart clenches. That's Vierin, probably dodging or deflecting shots. He can't take too long. With frantic tapping, he finds the override subroutine. Yes, he whispers. I can scramble the rest if I... Another beep. He sees a red light on the device. No. They put in a failsafe. The other drones might already be reading that something's wrong. He hears the whir of approaching rotors. Dax cusses, glancing around. He can't see Vierin, but he hopes she's still alive. The only option left is to fire off his EMP charge, but that'll kill the power to everything. The comm tower, his device, the drone. He tries a last-ditch hack, bypassing the failsafe. Just as he thinks he's in, 2 more drones come zooming toward him from the clearing. Energy blasts scorch the ground. Dax rolls under a hail of gunfire, dragging the half-hacked drone behind a chunk of twisted metal. Damn it, he growls, prepping the EMP charge. This was not how he pictured the day going. If he triggers the charge, the entire tower goes offline, and Viren's chance at calling her people is gone. But if he doesn't, these drones will slaughter them both. Suddenly, from the east, Viren lunges into sight. She's breathing heavily, her top partially singed, revealing an expanse of glowing green skin. She hurls a spear-like rod at one drone, striking its rotor. It sputters and careens into a tree, exploding in sparks. The second drone whips around to fire at her, and she darts behind cover with inhuman agility. Dax seizes the moment. He jams the final code line into the compromised drone's system. With a victorious beep, the drone lurches upright, pivoting its turret toward the other machine. It's under his partial control now. Yes, he shouts. Eat your own bullets, you tin can. The drone's turret blasts the other machine with a streak of plasma. The drone cracks in half, raining sparks. Within seconds, the clearing is silent. No more whirring. No more firing. Dax stands, panting, chest heaving, adrenaline buzzing through his veins. He tries to steady the half-hacked drone, which wavers uncertainly in the air. Viren emerges, limping slightly, left arm singed. Her skin glistens with sweat, and her chest, he can't help noticing, has indeed grown. It's straining against the damaged top, the faint glow along the edges making it look almost dangerously tight. She looks furious and triumphant, and dangerously alluring all at once. You okay? He calls, letting go of the drone. It hovers at a neutral stance, awaiting new instructions. We did it. She wipes her brow, nodding. I'll survive. Good thinking with the hack. Now can we secure the tower? He strides over, scanning her for injuries. Apart from the burn on her arm and the obvious discomfort from her chest, she seems mostly intact. I'll reprogram the drone to stand guard while we head inside. Let's make this quick. She grimaces, pressing a hand over her chest as if to contain the sudden rush of heat. The sooner the better. This burning sensation is getting worse. They slip through the chain-link fence, stepping over the wreckage. Dax leads Viren into the base of the tower, forcing open a metal door with a crowbar. Inside, the control room is dusty but intact. A few flickering lights show that some of the systems are operational. Viren immediately goes to a console, typing commands in her alien script. The screen flickers, then displays error messages. She frowns, rubbing her arms. Power is stable, but the communications array is locked behind encryption. Terran code. Can you break it? Dax sets his device on the console, hooking up cables. He glances sideways at Viren, noticing the sheen of sweat on her forehead. Take a seat, he murmurs. I'll handle this. You're looking rough. She hovers for a moment, conflicted, then reluctantly sinks into a chair. Her breathing is labored, her eyes shut, and he can see the tense line of her jaw. This transformation. I can feel my heartbeat in my chest. It's throbbing. She opens her eyes, meeting his gaze. You truly have no idea what's causing it? He shakes his head, turning to the console. None. I wish I could help more directly. Let me get you to your people. They might know how to fix it. Her eyes darken. They might, or they might interpret this as a force bonding ritual. My clan has complicated customs about bodily modifications. He types a line of code, glancing her way. Force bonding? Like marriage? She barks a laugh, though it's strained. Worse. Sometimes it's considered an act of ownership. And if they assume you did it, you might be hunted for defiling a clan member. He stares at the code on the screen. Great. So either they fix you and kill me, or they blame me for something I didn't do and still kill me. That's fan-freaking-tastic. She lets out a humorless exhale. We'll figure something out. Then her face contorts again, a fresh wave of pain or heat rolling through her. Is it always so hot on these planets? I feel like I'm on fire. He sets the code to decrypt, then kneels beside her. Carefully, he touches her wrist. Her skin is feverish to the touch, sending a prickle of warmth up his arm. You're blazing. We need to cool you down. She swallows hard, eyes fluttering. How? He quickly looks around the control room and spots a small sink. The water might be stale, but it's probably better than nothing. He rummages through dusty cabinets until he finds a rag, wets it, and returns to her side. Gently he presses it to her brow. She shivers, leaning into the chill. That helps, she murmurs. He can't help the strange twist in his chest. Seeing her in pain triggers a protective urge in him. He tries to hide it behind a gruff tone. Yeah, well, you better not die before we get that code cracked. I need your help to get off this planet too. She almost smiles, then closes her eyes. As if you don't have 100 bases you can hide in. Why are you even here? He doesn't answer. It's too complicated, running from his own past, from the Terran Federation, from the memories of a betrayal he can't shake. Instead, he focuses on dabbing the cool rag along Viren's forehead and temples. The glow under her skin flickers in response, like she's either calmed or further agitated. He can't tell. She exhales, the tension in her shoulders easing. Time passes. The console beeps, indicating partial decryption. Dax returns to it, punching in some more commands. He hears Viren shift behind him, standing again. When he glances over, she's pressing her palm against her chest as though testing its size. She grimaces in embarrassment. I don't even know what a normal shape is anymore. She mutters, half to herself. It feels sensitive. Heavy. And I swear it grew more when we were in that vent together. Or maybe it's my imagination. The memory of her body pressed against him in that narrow space flashes in his mind. He clears his throat. Probably just a sign of stress. Maybe your body's in fight or flight mode. She lifts a skeptical brow. You humans always blame stress for everything. In my culture, a sudden growth in certain areas usually indicates a mating bond is forming. But that's impossible. Dax's hand freezes on the keyboard. He tries to force a casual laugh. A mating bond? From being near me for what, an hour? She shrugs, looking genuinely disturbed. The specifics of our biology can be triggered by synergy with an alien species, or certain chemical interactions. But it's extremely rare. I never believed it could happen. Especially with a human. He tries to ignore the uncomfortable flutter in his gut. Well, if it is some sort of bond, maybe we can break it with a medical remedy. She doesn't respond, and for a moment, the room is quiet except for the beep of the decryption software. Then she speaks softly, as if admitting a secret. If it's truly a bond, it might not be reversible. My clan sees it as an absolute. The only alternative is if one of us dies. A chill ripples through Dax, and he meets her gaze. She doesn't look like she's bluffing. He forces a dry swallow. Let's hope it's a glitch. Because I'm not planning on dying, and I'd rather not kill you, so, glitch it is. She nods once, turning away. Yes, a glitch. Let's fix it. The console beeps again, decryption complete. Dax scans the readout. We have partial access to comm frequencies. I can open a short burst channel for you to reach whoever you want. She stands behind him, scanning the screen. Good. Let me set the encryption so my message is hidden from certain factions. She leans over, tapping keys in her alien script. Her hair brushes his shoulder, and he inhales the faint, exotic scent of her. He feels an unsettling warmth climb up his neck, reminding him how complicated this is getting. In the next minute, Viren transmits a coded signal. A hush fills the tower as they wait, glancing at each other without speaking. Dax wonders if she'll really call her clan or if she's calling someone else, someone who won't kill him for his alleged chest enlarging crimes. After a tense silence, the console crackles to life. Viren's posture stiffens, and she speaks in a language he can't fully grasp. He picks out a few words that might be her name. A voice answers in short bursts, crackling. Then it goes dead. Viren presses a few more keys, cursing softly in her language. What happened? Dax asks. She frowns. That was an outpost of my people. They heard my call but said they're under watch by a faction loyal to a rival clan. They can't risk a rescue right now. The best they can do is meet us in a neutral zone, but it's several days' travel from here. And if the Terran Federation or the rival clan intercepts me first, it could be complicated. Dax runs a hand through his hair. So basically, we're on our own for a while. She nods, flicking the console off. Until I can meet my contact. You can either come with me, or you can part ways here. He eyes her chest once more, seeing how the fabric strains. He thinks about the drones that nearly killed them, the outpost that's probably crawling with more security by now, and the possibility that if her people see him as the culprit for her condition, he could be hunted down. But leaving her alone like this, in pain, with no immediate rescue? That leaves a sour taste in his mouth. He sighs, leaning against the console. I'll go with you. You'll need backup until you're stable. But don't start any more rumor that I'm messing with your body, got it? She almost smirks. You assume I have any interest in telling them you're innocent. Perhaps I prefer them believing you forced this on me. A spike of anger flares in him. He steps closer, tension crackling. Listen, you blame me for something I didn't do one more time. I might just leave you to handle it yourself. Her eyes flash, and she steps up to him, chin tilted. They're nearly chest to chest. He can feel her heat. Try it, human. For a moment, either of them moves. The air is thick with challenge, with the friction of distrust and a strange, magnetic pull. Then the moment breaks when an alarm from outside starts to wail, some sort of perimeter alert that might indicate more drones or an incoming patrol. Dax looks away, swallowing the lump in his throat. We have to get out of here, he mutters. Grab supplies, whatever you need, and let's vanish before more of those tin cans show up. She exhales, frustration flickering in her eyes. Fine. But remember, if we're traveling together, don't even think of messing with me again. He glares. I never messed with you in the first place. She simply turns on her heel, pushing open the door to exit the tower. He follows, cursing under his breath at how complicated this has become. Yet some part of him can't deny that in the heat of her accusations, in the closeness of that vent, in the tang of her breath on his neck, he'd felt a flicker of something. Attraction, desire, some primal spark that had no place in this chaotic setting. He shoves the thought away as they step into the night, the flickering drone he hacked hovering behind them for protection. They move back into the forest, heading northwest toward the location Viren's contact mentioned. It's at least 3 or 4 days on foot, given the terrain. Dax pulls up a rough map on his handheld, showing a cluster of mountainous regions. Viren glances at it, rubbing the throbbing spot on her chest absently. Her eyes linger on the screen, then flick to him. She holds herself stiff, refusing to show weakness. The sound of distant engines roars overhead. Dax tenses, looking up through the branches. Federation patrol flyers, maybe. Let's move quick. If they find us, they'll shoot first, ask questions never. Viren grunts in agreement. Your species' hospitality is astounding. He forces a wry smile. You have no idea. They walk in tense silence for the next hour, weaving through the underbrush. Dax occasionally stops to check for tracking signals, ensuring the hacked drone is still following. Viren tries to keep her breathing steady, but he can tell she's in discomfort. Every so often, she mutters, "This is unbearable," or stifles a soft moan when the pressure intensifies. He finally calls a halt near a cluster of boulders that form a natural shelter. We can rest here for a bit. I'll see if I can rig some makeshift remedy for you. She sets her jaw, glaring as if reluctant to accept his help. But fatigue and pain are plain on her face. She sinks onto a large rock, pressing a palm to her sternum. If you have any medical knowledge, use it. I won't resist. I'm too tired for pride. He drops his pack, digs through the meager supplies. He's got a basic field kit with analgesics and mild sedatives. He's not sure if her physiology will accept them without complication. I can try a local pain blocker, but it might react weird with your alien biology. Then again, you're in pain now, so might be worth a shot. She eyes the vial suspiciously. Let's see it. He offers it, and she inspects it, sniffing the solution, reading the label. This might help with inflammation, but there's a risk it could accelerate the growth if my body interprets it as a foreign stimulant. He rubs his temple. So either we do nothing, and you suffer, or we risk it making things worse. He can't keep the frustration out of his voice. She's suffering, but he doesn't have the knowledge to fix it. Your call. She grimaces. Give me a minute. He stands there, shifting from foot to foot, while she inhales slowly, focusing. The faint luminescent lines on her skin pulse with each breath. Dax wonders if it's some kind of self-healing technique. After about a minute, she opens her eyes, exhaling. No. I'll hold off for now. My body might be able to stabilize on its own. He nods, relieved in some way. All right, but let me know if you change your mind. They settle in for a short break. Dax stands guard, scanning the dark forest, listening for patrols. Viren stands up after a few minutes, pacing in slow circles around the small clearing. Her arms are folded, the posture protective, as if she's trying to hide her chest from him. The tension in her expression hasn't left. After about 15 minutes, she stops, turning to face him. Why do you keep looking at me like that? He blinks. Like what? Like you're afraid, or guilty, or something else. Is my body that off-putting to you? He arches a brow. Off-putting? More like distracting. He admits, and then regrets it instantly, because her eyes narrow. Distracting how? She stands straighter, pressing her shoulders back. He can't help but notice the way the moonlight highlights the contours of her figure. He rubs the back of his neck. Look, you're a beautiful woman, all right? Even if you are green and blame me for weird stuff, I'd have to be blind not to notice. She lifts her chin, uncertain how to respond. For a moment, it looks like she might soften. Then she folds her arms again, turning away. I'm not used to humans seeing me that way. My species has always kept to ourselves. We rarely mingle. He tries to keep his tone casual. Well, now you know how at least one human sees you. Let's leave it at that. She glances over her shoulder, her lips parted. Fine. A strange tension thrums between them, thick and unresolved. They set off again, continuing through the forest until the sky starts to lighten with a false dawn. Finally, they come upon a small ravine with a trickle of water at the bottom. Dax decides they need to rest properly before going further. They find a sheltered nook under a rocky overhang. He rigs a small sensor net to alert them if anything approaches. Viren slumps against the stone, exhaling shakily. Dax rummages for ration bars and tosses one to her. She catches it, eyes the wrapper. What's this? Food. It tastes like cardboard, but it has nutrients. She opens it cautiously, sniffs, and then takes a tentative bite. Her face twists, but she forces it down. Disgusting, but I'm starving. He smirks, nodding. You'll get used to it if you hang around humans long enough. She finishes it in a few bites, then closes her eyes, leaning her head back against the rock. The glow in her skin is more subdued now, maybe because she's exhausted. Her chest still looks painfully constrained. He tries not to stare, but he can't deny the flicker of concern. Do you need help adjusting that top or something? Her eyes snap open, brimming with indignation. I can manage on my own. He raises a hand in defense. Hey, just offering. You look like you're about to suffocate. She sighs, some of the fight going out of her. It's an adaptive material, but it wasn't designed for this level of expansion. I might have to cut it if the swelling continues. He averts his gaze, trying not to let his imagination run wild. If that's what you need, do it. No sense in harming yourself. Besides, I'm not going to judge. She gives him a sidelong look. I've seen how you stare. He sets his jaw. I'm human. I'm visual, all right. But I'm not going to jump you, if that's what you're worried about. She actually laughs, though it's a strange sound. I'm not worried about you jumping me. I'm more worried about the effect your presence might be having on my body. He stiffens. You still think I'm causing this? She shakes her head, closing her eyes again. I don't know. Part of me believes you. Part of me wonders if there's some pheromone or chemical you're giving off that interacts with my species. I can't rule it out. He exhales, dropping onto his makeshift bedding. Then keep your distance if that helps. But we still have to travel together. She purses her lips. It's not your proximity that's the problem, necessarily. If it were, I'd have reacted instantly the moment I saw you. This transformation started sometime while I was unconscious in the stasis pod. I only became aware of it once I landed. She hesitates, almost as if she's testing out theories in her mind. Then she drops the subject, letting the silence stretch. They both settle down, the dawn creeping over the horizon. The forest around them comes alive with morning birds and insects. After a while, Viren speaks in a quieter voice. Dax, do you truly have no place to go once we leave here? Why were you on that outpost alone? He stares at the sky, a bitter taste in his mouth. It's complicated. Let's just say I burned a lot of bridges with the Terran Federation. They wanted me to do something I couldn't, so I ran. Now I roam from planet to planet making do. The outpost was my latest hideaway. She listens quietly, then says, So you're exiled? He shrugs. Call it self-imposed exile. I've never been much good at playing nice with authority. She nods slowly, as if that resonates with her. Then maybe we have something in common, after all. They lapse into silence. Eventually, exhaustion overtakes them both. Dax sets a final perimeter check with the sensor net, then closes his eyes. He drifts in and out of fitful sleep, the tension of the past hours weighing on him. When he wakes, it's near midday. The sun slices through the canopy. He hears Viren shifting quietly in the corner of the nook. Slowly, he sits up, blinking the grit from his eyes. She's standing, examining a torn piece of her top. She must have cut it during the night to relieve some pressure. Her chest is less compressed now, more exposed. He quickly averts his eyes. She notices, letting out a soft scoff. Don't pretend you didn't see. He rubs the bridge of his nose. I'm trying to give you privacy. Don't bother. I'm beyond modesty at this point. She sets the torn cloth aside. He can see a thin band still covering her, but the curves of her green skin are more pronounced. Her breathing is a fraction easier. At least it's not as painful now. He stands, stretching his stiff limbs. That's good. Maybe this means the growth is slowing. She nods, though she looks uncertain. I can't be sure, but I feel less inflamed. Maybe my body is stabilizing. We should keep moving. They gather their gear, forging deeper into the wilderness. The day is hot, the sun relentless. Dax can't recall a time he's sweated this much. Viren seems equally affected. By midday, they find a small stream. He kneels to refill their canteens, while Viren stands guard. Suddenly, he hears her gasp, and he jerks upright. A small group of figures emerges from the trees, armed, wearing mismatched gear that suggests mercenaries or rogue Federation scouts. One steps forward, leveling a weapon at them. Look what we have here, the man drawls. A green-skinned beauty and a Terran outcast? You guys lost? Dax rises slowly, careful not to make sudden moves. Viren's posture is coiled, ready to spring. He sees 5 men total, all with rifles or sidearms. The man in front smirks, eyes flicking over Viren's body. Interesting. I heard rumors of an alien crash not far from here. I guess we found the pilot. Viren's hand flexes near the hilt of a blade. Dax tries a conciliatory tone. We're just passing through. Don't want any trouble. The man chuckles, a nasty sound. Trouble's here, friend. The Federation put a bounty on any unknown aliens found in this region. Some clan warfare going on. My boys and I plan to cash in. Viren's eyes dart to Dax, a silent question, fight or run? Dax glances around. The men have them half surrounded. Running might be possible but risky. Fighting would be equally dangerous. We're not bounty-worthy. He tries, raising his hands. She's not part of that clan war, just a traveler who crashed. A second man snarls. Save it. We'll take her in, collect the reward, and maybe see what she's got under that scrap of clothing. Dax's blood boils. He steps protectively in front of Viren. Don't even think about it, he growls. The men laugh. One steps closer, brandishing his rifle. You think we can't handle you? Viren's voice is like cold steel. Touch me, and I'll slice your hand off before you blink. The man scoffs, swinging his weapon. Is that so? He lunges. The moment he does, Viren ducks under the rifle, hooking her leg behind his knee, sending him sprawling. In a fluid motion, she draws her blade and slashes at the second man's rifle, knocking it aside. Dax leaps into action, tackling the third man, driving a fist into his jaw. Shots ring out, echoing in the forest. A bullet grazes Dax's shoulder, searing pain lancing through him. He hisses, rolling aside and yanking the wounded man's weapon away. Viren moves with lethal grace, disarming one attacker after another with quick, precise strikes. The men shout curses, trying to regroup. The lead merc lifts his sidearm, firing at Viren. She dodges left, but the bullet grazes her thigh. She stumbles, wincing. He rushes forward, aiming for a headshot. Dax, adrenaline pumping, raises his stolen rifle and fires a burst. The merc goes down, cursing as he hits the ground. The others, seeing their leader fall, break rank and run, dragging the injured behind them. Viren sinks to one knee, pressing a hand to her bleeding thigh. Dax rushes over, checking her wound. You okay? She grits her teeth. It's just a flesh wound. But it stings. He quickly grabs bandages from his pack. Let me see. She allows him to wrap the wound, though she clenches her jaw the entire time, refusing to cry out. Up close, he can see the strain etched in her face, pain, exhaustion, frustration. She's trembling slightly. Whether from adrenaline or blood loss he can't tell. When the bandage is secured, she exhales. Thank you? There's a reluctant edge of gratitude in her voice. I'll heal fast. My species regenerates more quickly than humans. He glances at her top, noticing fresh tears in the fabric. The curve of her chest is more exposed now, the green skin tinted with a faint glow. He tries to keep his focus on her wound. We should move before they regroup. She nods, attempting to stand. Dax steadies her with a firm grip around her waist. She tenses, a flicker of that strange embarrassment passing over her features. But she doesn't push him away. Slowly, they walk together away from the stream, deeper into the forest. The entire time, the memory of that bullet graze on his own shoulder throbs, but it's not too bad. He can manage. They find a small clearing bathed in golden afternoon light. Viren slumps against a tree, catching her breath. Dax stands a few feet away, scanning the perimeter. He knows they need a more secure hiding spot, but for the moment, they're both spent. The fight and the tension and the injuries have taken their toll. Viren looks up at him. Her hair is disheveled, and there's dried blood on her thigh. Her chest rises and falls in shallow breaths, and he realizes how close she came to serious harm. An unexpected surge of protectiveness and anger floods him. She meets his gaze, her own eyes haunted. That's why I can't let the Federation find me. They'll treat me like a bounty. Some trophy to sell or experiment on. He nods, stepping closer. I won't let that happen. He doesn't even think about the words, they just spill out. She gives him a long, searching look. Why do you care? She asks softly. He exhales. Because I've seen what they do. And because I just do, all right? She lowers her gaze. You're a strange human. First you claim you didn't enlarge me, then you risk your life to defend me. You don't seem to fit any category I know. He smirks ruefully. I take that as a compliment. He crouches beside her, checking her bandage. We should keep going soon, but let's just catch our breath. She nods, her eyes drifting shut for a moment. The forest hums around them. Dax finds himself acutely aware of her proximity, the curve of her half-exposed chest, the softness of her breath. He feels a stirring inside him that's more than just protectiveness, something deeper, more primal. He tries to tamp it down. This is the worst time to let attraction cloud his judgment. When they resume walking, he notices how she leans on him slightly. She tries to hide it, but the limp is obvious. He slips an arm around her waist, guiding her. She stiffens at first, then relaxes, too tired to protest. The day wears on, and the forest transitions from bright afternoon to the soft gloom of early evening. They stumble upon a fallen log bridging a shallow ravine. Dax helps Viren across, and they make camp on the other side. He sets up a small camouflage tarp, checks his sensor net. No immediate threats. They settle in. Viren lowers herself onto a makeshift seat of moss and leaves. She exhales slowly, removing the remains of her top to inspect her chest in the fading light. Dax turns away, giving her some semblance of privacy. She swallows audibly. It's definitely bigger, she mutters, half to herself. My clan will assume we, you know. He flicks a glance over his shoulder, carefully. Assume we what? Her cheeks flush. Mated. Physical contact that triggered a bonding reaction. That's one of the only times such transformations occur. He rubs his temples, feeling the start of a headache. We haven't. Obviously we haven't. But they won't believe me, will they? She shakes her head, tugging on a spare piece of cloth to rewrap her chest more loosely. Probably not. And if they discover we spent so much time alone together while I was transformed, they'll assume you claimed me. By my people's logic, I'd be your property. Or we'd be forcibly bonded. It depends on which clan elder is in charge. He grits his teeth. That's insane. If that's their custom, do you want to be stuck in that situation? Her voice is laced with bitterness. No. I didn't ask for this. But we have to face reality. My clan's beliefs won't change just because I want them to. He stands pacing. Then maybe the best plan is to get you away from all of them. Let them think you died in the crash or something. She looks up, startled. That would mean permanent exile from my people. He folds his arms. You were complaining about them possibly killing me or forcing you to be my property. Isn't exile better? She's silent, considering. Then her shoulders slump. Perhaps it is. But I've never considered leaving them. My life, my identity, everything is tied to my clan. They might have archaic rules, but they're still my people. He exhales, brushing a hand over his stubble. I get it. All I know is, if they see you like this, they'll jump to conclusions. Maybe we can find a cure or a fix before we meet them, so the transformation is reversed and no one suspects anything. A flicker of hope crosses her face. That might be possible if we find advanced medical tech. But that means traveling off-world to a bigger station or hidden lab. And that's not exactly easy if the Federation's hunting me, plus your own issues with them. He steps outside the tarp, gazing at the star-pocked sky. We'll figure something out. Let's keep heading to the neutral zone your contact mentioned. If we can slip away from your clan after that, we might find a place to get you help. She stands, wincing at the pain in her thigh. All right. But it's not going to be easy, Dax. We might have to fight for it. He gives a hollow laugh. Fight is all I've done for years. She studies him, her expression softer. Thank you? She hesitates, clenching her jaw. Let's just get through this, okay? He nods, and they settle in for the night. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by nightmares of drones and bounty hunters. At one point, he jolts awake to find Viren stirring restlessly, her breathing uneven. He crawls over, gently touches her shoulder. You okay? He whispers. She swallows hard. It's burning again. My chest, my skin, it's like a fever. He glances at her in the dim starlight, sees a sheen of sweat. He touches her forehead, wincing at how hot she feels. Damn. Let me see if I can at least help you cool down. He moistens another cloth from his canteen, presses it to the back of her neck. She exhales a shaky breath, leaning into his touch. They remain like that for a few minutes, either speaking, just locked in an unspoken truce. The feel of her body, the brush of her hair. He tries to keep his thoughts pure, but there's an undeniable spark. Her skin is unbelievably soft, even as it radiates feverish heat. He notices how close they are, how their breath mingles in the darkness. Her voice finally breaks the hush. This is humiliating. I'm grateful, but I hate that you see me this vulnerable. He gently strokes the cloth over her collarbone. Everybody needs help sometimes. Even fierce alien women. She almost smiles, then her expression tightens. My kind. We don't show weakness lightly. But right now, I feel like I'm falling apart. She closes her eyes, swallowing. It's worse because I can sense attraction. Yours, mine. It's confusing my body. My species is extremely sensitive to sexual energy, and it might be fueling this transformation. Dax's heart hammers. Wait, you're saying if we feel that way, your body reacts physically? She lets out a shaky laugh. Yes. Which is exactly why I can't afford to entertain these emotions. He tries to steady his pulse. Right. We'll just pretend we're not drawn to each other then. No big deal. She sighs. Easier said than done? Then she reaches up, covers his hand with hers, holding the cloth in place at her neck. Their fingers brush, and a jolt shoots through him. For a heartbeat, they linger like that, eyes locked. The darkness seems to intensify the moment. But she forces a half smile, releases his hand, and lies back down. I'll try to rest. Thank you? He nods, swallowing against the dryness in his throat. Sure. Get some sleep. He pulls back, lying in his own spot. The night drags on, each moment heavy with unspoken tension. Eventually, exhaustion claims him. Morning arrives bright and relentless. They share a terse breakfast of ration bars and water, then set off again. The forest begins to thin, giving way to rolling hills dotted with alien flora. Viren's limp is less pronounced, and she seems marginally stronger, though she still presses her palm to her chest now and then. Dax's shoulder is stiff, but manageable. Mid-afternoon, they crest a ridge and see a small settlement in the distance, a handful of structures huddled around what looks like farmland. Viren suggests they avoid it, given how humans might react to her. But Dax thinks they could use supplies and maybe a safe place to rest. They compromise on sending him alone to scout. She waits in the cover of a rocky outcropping. He approaches the settlement, finding it largely deserted. A few locals glare at him suspiciously but don't seem hostile. He manages to trade a spare part for some fresh produce and water. When asked about his business, he says he's passing through, no trouble. They seem to accept that. Before leaving, he tries to glean any info on Federation presence. One old man says a patrol came through 2 days ago, asking about sightings of a green-skinned alien. They left when nobody had answers. With that news, Dax returns to Viren. She sits on a flat rock, her face set in determined lines. When she sees him approaching, relief flickers over her features, quickly masked. You were gone a while. He hands her some fresh fruit. Had to be careful. They're suspicious of strangers. But they gave me no trouble. Heard the Federation was looking for you. She tenses, biting into the fruit. Of course they are. And likely that rival clan, too. We should keep moving. They trek for the rest of the day, eventually finding a hidden glen to camp in. As night falls, a storm begins to rumble across the sky. Lightning flashes in the distance, thunder rolling through the hills. The wind picks up, and they scramble to secure the tarp and find shelter under a rocky overhang. Rain starts lashing down, cold and unrelenting. Huddled together, they watch the storm rage. Water cascades over the rocks, forming a temporary waterfall. Viren rubs her arms, shivering slightly. Dax presses close to help keep her warm. She doesn't resist, though she looks uncertain. Lightning illuminates her features, and for a moment, he sees raw vulnerability. I hate storms, she admits, voice nearly lost in the roar of rain. They remind me of the day my father left for war and never returned. Dax softens. I'm sorry. She shrugs, looking away. It was a long time ago. Still, the memory haunts me. She glances back at him. You're different. You've also lost someone, haven't you? His heart twists. He thinks of his unit, how they turned on him, how he lost them all after refusing an order that would have killed innocent bystanders. He doesn't want to share, but her voice compels honesty. Yeah, in a sense. People I thought were friends. People I trusted. She nods, her expression troubled. That pain never really goes away, does it? He sighs. No, it doesn't. For a while, they just listen to the storm. The cold forces them closer, side by side under the tarp. The tension that's been a constant between them shifts. It becomes something deeper, tinged with sadness and empathy. Eventually, the thunder grows distant. The rain lessens to a steady patter. Viren shivers again, hugging herself. Dax moves closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She stiffens but doesn't pull away. Her voice is a husky whisper. Your body is so warm. He can feel the wet strands of her hair against his cheek. You're the one with the feverish glow. He teases gently. She almost smiles, resting her head on his shoulder. Maybe we're both warm. A pause, then quieter. When this transformation started, I was furious. I thought you violated me somehow. And now, I don't know what to think. He tightens his arm around her. I get it. You didn't ask for this. Neither did I. But we're in it together now. She looks up at him. The glow in her eyes shimmers in the faint light. Do you truly believe me when I say I don't want to belong to anyone? That I don't want to be forced into some archaic bond? He nods slowly, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. Yeah, I believe you. She shivers again, leaning into him. Their gazes lock, and for a moment, time seems to hang suspended. He can see the question in her eyes. He's sure she can see the turmoil in his. The closeness, the shared warmth, the memory of those heated accusations about body modifications, it all condenses into a single, charged moment. He doesn't know who moves first, but their lips meet in a tentative brush. She inhales sharply, and he feels her hand grip his shoulder. For a split second, they hover on the edge, then the dam breaks. They kiss fiercely, as though releasing weeks of tension, even though it's been only days. Her lips are hot, and he tastes the rain on them. She makes a soft sound in the back of her throat, pressing closer. His heart pounds in his chest, every nerve alive. But just as quickly she gasps, pulling back, her eyes wide. My body. She places a hand to her chest, and he sees the luminescence flare. She doubles over with a ragged moan. It's too intense. He grips her arms, alarmed. Viren! Talk to me. She clenches her teeth, struggling to breathe. The attraction, it's triggering another surge. I feel like I'm. She can't finish, slumping against him. Her entire torso glows with a pulsating pattern, and he sees her chest straining again. It's like her body is responding violently to the arousal. Fear spikes in him. Hey, slow down. He murmurs, guiding her onto the ground. The rain patters overhead, and the tarp flaps. Breathe. He cradles her, pressing the cool cloth to her forehead again, though it's hardly enough. She trembles, sweat beading on her skin. After a tense minute, she manages to regain her breath, her glow subsiding a bit. She exhales shakily. I can't handle that level of intimacy yet. She squeezes her eyes shut, looking ashamed. My body nearly short-circuited from a kiss. It's that damned bond reaction, I'm sure of it. My system thinks we're on the brink of mating. If we go further, I don't know what'll happen. Dax's chest feels tight. He strokes a hand over her hair, ignoring the storm. All right, let's take it slow. We don't want you going into shock. She nods, still trembling. I'm sorry. This is humiliating. He presses his forehead to hers gently. Don't be. We'll figure it out. They remain entwined, the storm washing over them, both of them soaked to the bone. Slowly, her breathing stabilizes, and the glow in her skin calms. She leans against him, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. He holds her in silence, listening to the rain. They set off again in the morning, both subdued. There's an unspoken agreement not to mention the kiss. They press onward through the hills, navigating by Dax's handheld map. Viren's thigh wound seems to be healing, though she still winces occasionally. They trade minimal words, as if both are afraid that speaking about last night's moment of closeness will trigger another surge. By midday, the terrain becomes rocky and treacherous. They pick their way along a narrow path winding up into higher elevations. The wind is cold, slicing through their damp clothes. Dax keeps an arm around Viren when the path gets slippery, and she grudgingly accepts the help. They reach a plateau in the late afternoon. A vast expanse of sky stretches around them, clouds hanging low. Dax checks his device. They're nearing the neutral zone coordinates. They might arrive by nightfall. But as they round a bend, Viren sucks in a breath. He follows her gaze and sees a small legion of figures in the distance, armed silhouettes moving along a ridgeline. Federation troopers, maybe 24 of them, forming a blockade. Viren curses. They must have tracked my comm signal after all. Dax clenches his fists. We can't fight them all. We'll have to go around. She shakes her head. This is the only pass. Going around would add days, and my contacts said they'd be here tonight. We can't risk missing them. He grimaces. Then we need another approach. Maybe wait until dark, slip through somehow. Viren nods, tension etched across her face. Yes, let's find cover and plan. They retreat behind a craggy outcrop. The air is thinner at this altitude, and Viren looks pale, well, as pale as a green-skinned alien can look. He helps her sit on a flat rock. She rubs her chest, wincing again. It's back? He asks softly. She nods, swallowing hard. Not as bad as before, but yes. The closer we get to confrontation or stress, the more my body reacts. It's like it's urging me to complete the bond. Sometimes my species sees heightened danger as a sign to ensure procreation or something primal like that. He can't quite wrap his mind around it. So your body's basically telling you we should mate because we're facing danger? She presses her lips into a tight line, nodding reluctantly. Yes, it's embarrassing. But that's how we evolved. I hate it. Dax's heart thumps. The memory of that frantic kiss in the rain sets his nerves alight. He clenches his hands into fists. We'll focus on survival first. Then we'll figure out how to handle your biology. Let's see if we can pick off a few troopers or slip by them unnoticed. They wait until dusk, the sun sinking in a blaze of red across the horizon. The temperature drops further. At last, they creep toward the pass, sticking to the shadows. They see the troopers set up in squads. Dax counts at least 20, maybe more hidden. Viren gestures to him, pointing toward a cluster of boulders that might provide partial cover. They move slowly, aware of every shift in the wind. Suddenly, a flare ignites above them, lighting the area in harsh white. A trooper shouts, "Movement in the rocks. Fan out." Dax curses. They've been spotted. Shots ring out. Dax dives behind a boulder, pulling Viren with him. Plasma blasts scorch the stone. She hisses in frustration, brandishing her blade. We're pinned. Dax fires back blindly, forcing the troopers to take cover. But they have superior firepower. He's just one man with a rifle, and Viren's blade is useless at long range. Tension claws at his throat. We'll never break through if we don't find another route or create a bigger distraction. Viren closes her eyes, focusing. The luminous patterns flicker under her skin. I have an idea. But it's risky. He glares at her. What idea? She meets his gaze, her expression resolute. My species can generate a pheromone-laden sonic wave. It's usually for large-scale mating calls or intimidation in warfare. It can disrupt the nervous system of other species, cause confusion. But it drains me severely, especially in my current state. He swallows. You think it'll knock them out? She nods hesitantly. Or at least stun them long enough for us to slip by. Dax inches up, returning fire at some troopers. Do it then. She takes a deep breath, stepping out from behind the boulder just enough to face the line of troopers. She opens her mouth, and from her throat comes a resonant, otherworldly sound. It pulses through the air, vibrating in Dax's chest. The troopers falter, some dropping to their knees, clutching their heads. The flares overhead flicker. Dax feels a wave of dizziness but fights it off, focusing on Viren's presence. Go! She gasps, her voice strained. Dax slings her arm over his shoulder, helping her run through the pass. The troopers reel, trying to aim. One gets off a shot that grazes Dax's leg, burning pain searing him. He grits his teeth, pushing through. Another tries to block their path, but Viren slashes out with her blade, disarming him. They sprint past, hearts pounding, skidding down the far side of the ridge. The sonic wave subsides, leaving Viren panting and trembling. Dax half carries her as they weave into a cleft in the rocks. Behind them, the troopers are regaining their senses, shouting, firing blindly. But they've lost the vantage, and darkness helps cover Dax and Viren's escape. They scramble deeper, stumbling into a rocky canyon. Finally, they collapse behind a natural stone wall, breath ragged. Dax checks Viren. She's pale, eyes unfocused. Hey. You did it, but that took a lot out of you. She can barely speak. I feel drained. Hot. Cold. Everything is spinning. He presses a hand to her cheek. Hang on. We're almost there. He rummages in his pack, giving her water. She drinks it down in shaky gulps. He can see the flare of that glowing pattern across her chest, more subdued but still present. We'll rest here for a moment. He murmurs, cradling her. The night air is frigid at this altitude, and a chill breeze cuts through. She presses close, seeking warmth, and he wraps his arms around her. Despite the dire situation, the closeness sends a ripple of longing through him. He clenches his jaw, pushing the feeling aside. After some time, she recovers enough to stand. Together they limp through the canyon, guided by the faint starlight. Near midnight they finally reach the coordinates Viren's contact mentioned, a small plateau ringed by ancient standing stones. The place feels old, sacred. Dax helps her to the center, scanning for any sign of her people. They wait under the moonlight, every nerve on edge. Hours pass with no sign of anyone. Viren paces, though she's clearly still weak. Dax checks the horizon repeatedly, half expecting troopers or mercs to appear. Instead, the wind howls, carrying faint echoes of the nighttime desert. Finally, as the moon reaches its zenith, a lone figure steps out from the shadows. Viren tenses. The figure removes a hood, revealing another alien with skin of a similar hue but lighter. This new arrival dips their head, speaking softly in Viren's language. Viren responds, voice trembling with relief and wariness. The newcomer glances at Dax, eyes narrowing. Viren gestures, explaining something. The newcomer's expression shifts from caution to shock, then to something akin to pity or wariness. They exchange more words in alien tongue. Dax can only catch a few. He hears Viren mention the transformation, sees her point to her chest, the luminous lines, and then to him. The newcomer's eyes snap to Dax, filled with suspicion. They speak in halting common. You. Human. You forced a bond on Viren? Dax scowls. No. I didn't force anything. This is some weird cosmic mistake. Viren steps in. Ivana, please. He's not at fault. I need help. Is there a cure? Ivana sighs, shaking her head. I'm just a messenger, Viren. I came to warn you. Your rival clan knows about the transformation. They claim you belong to them by ancient right. They're sending hunters to find you. The Federation has sided with them for political gain. Viren stares in horror. What about our clan elders? Ivana frowns. They're divided. Some want war, others want to bury the matter. Word is spreading fast. The only solution might be to leave. Now. There's a smuggler's ship hidden 2 days from here at the old temple site. I can lead you, but you have to come quickly. And your bondmate. He must come too. Viren's cheeks flush. He's not my bondmate. He's just a companion. Ivana gives them both a pointed look, as if to say she doesn't believe it. Dax rubs the back of his neck, exasperated. Look, I'll come if that's what it takes to keep her safe. But this bond nonsense is. Ivana raises a hand. I don't care about the details. The clan does. If you stay, you'll both be hunted. If you leave, you might find a cure off-world, or at least some semblance of peace. Viren exhales shakily. Then we'll leave. Show us the way. Ivana nods, glancing around. We should go now. Others might be tracking me. Dax helps Viren walk. She seems steadier but still rattled. Ivana leads them away from the plateau, into a maze of rocky canyons. For hours they move in near silence, the only sound the crunch of gravel underfoot and Viren's occasional ragged breath. Dax sees the conflict in Viren's eyes. She's leaving behind everything she's known, but there's no real choice. By dawn, they reach a narrow valley with twisted spires of stone jutting up like teeth. Ivana stops near a sheer rock face, searching for something. Finally, she finds a hidden switch, and part of the rock slides aside, revealing a dim tunnel. They enter, the air stale and cold. The door slides shut behind them, cloaking them in darkness. Ivana activates a small glowing orb that illuminates a long passage sloping downward. We can rest here. No one knows about this tunnel except a few rebels. The temple site is on the other side. They set up a small camp in a side alcove. Viren collapses onto a makeshift bedroll. Dax kneels beside her, checking her bandage and offering water. Ivana watches them, her gaze unreadable. Finally, she clears her throat and says to Viren in their language, presumably something about letting Dax see to her injuries. Viren gives a curt nod. When Ivana steps away, Viren looks up at Dax. I'm sorry you've been dragged into all this. I know it's not your fight. He shrugs, brushing hair from her forehead. I'm already on the run. And you, well, you grew on me. He tries a half-hearted grin, but she lets out a breathy laugh despite her pain. Ivana returns with a small container of alien salve, offering it to Viren. Viren applies it to her thigh wound with a wince. The rest of the day passes in tense quiet. Dax dozes off occasionally, too exhausted to keep watch. He senses Ivana is armed and vigilant. At some point, Viren dozes as well, her head resting on his lap, her breathing shallow but calmer. When evening comes, they set off again through the tunnel. It spirals upward, eventually depositing them in a remote canyon. Ruined pillars and statues indicate an ancient temple site. A battered freighter sits half-concealed by tarps and netting. Ivana points to it. The smuggler is inside, waiting for you. They approach warily. A tall figure steps out of the freighter's open cargo ramp, eyeing them with cool appraisal. Ivana converses with the smuggler in hushed tones. Dax can't make out everything, but the gist is that the smuggler will take them off-world for a hefty fee. Ivana claims Viren can pay it later, once she's safe. The smuggler is reluctant, but eventually relents. Just as they prepare to board, a thunderous crash reverberates through the canyon. A squad of heavily armored figures emerges from the darkness, rival clan warriors, from the look of them, accompanied by Federation soldiers. One soldier steps forward, eyes blazing. There they are. The bonded traitor and her human conspirator. Seize them. Chaos erupts. Ivana draws a concealed blaster, firing at the approaching soldiers. The smuggler curses and ducks behind the cargo ramp, shouting for them to hurry inside. Viren grips her blade, trembling with fatigue. Dax hefts his rifle, returning fire. The canyon flashes with muzzle blasts and plasma arcs. A Federation soldier breaks through, aiming at Viren. Dax hurls himself in the way, taking a hit to his side that knocks the wind out of him. He collapses to a knee, blood seeping through his shirt. Viren lets out a sharp cry, plunging her blade into the soldier's chest. Another approaches from behind, but Ivana guns him down. The rival clan leader yells, Viren, submit to the rightful claim, or watch your human die. She trembles, tears in her eyes, glancing at Dax who clutches his wound. No, she snarls. Never. The leader gestures, and more soldiers surge forward. The smuggler yells for them to get on the ship. Dax summons the last of his strength, rising to his feet, stumbling. Viren grabs his arm, tears streaming, her chest glowing with fierce patterns. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispers. They stagger onto the freighter's ramp, Ivana covering them. The smuggler hits the controls and the ramp seals. The engines roar. The clan warriors pound on the hull, firing at the thrusters, but the old freighter lurches upward in a deafening roar of flames. They ascend out of the canyon, away from the hail of gunfire. Inside, Dax collapses onto a crate, trying to stanch the bleeding at his side. Viren kneels beside him, panic in her eyes. The glow in her skin intensifies. She tears a strip of cloth and presses it to his wound, her breath ragged. "Stay with me," she pleads, voice cracking. He manages a painful grin. "I'm not going anywhere." His vision swims. The last thing he sees before blacking out is her glowing face, tears falling, lips moving in silent desperation. When he comes to, he's lying on a bunk in a cramped cabin. The hum of the freighter's engines permeates the air. His side throbs, but the bleeding has stopped. He tries to sit up and groans. A slender, teal-skinned alien stands nearby, probably the ship's medic. Viren is at his side, looking drawn and pale. She grabs his hand as soon as he stirs. "You idiot," she murmurs, tears shining in her eyes. "You nearly died." He squeezes her fingers weakly. "Worth it if you're safe." He looks around. "We in space?" She nods. "Just broke orbit. The smuggler says they'll take us to a fringe station. No one should bother us there, if we pay enough." He exhales, relief mingling with pain. "Good." She leans closer, brushing hair from his forehead. Her voice trembles with emotion. "You could have just saved yourself. Why did you jump in the way?" He manages a faint smile. "Couldn't let them hurt you. I guess. I care about you, Viren. More than I realized." She draws in a shuddering breath. "Aye, Dax." She closes her eyes, tears slipping free. "I'm so sorry I blamed you for everything. I was scared. And the bond, or whatever this is, made me terrified I was losing control. But I see now, it wasn't you. It was always me, my fear, my clan's rules. None of that matters anymore." He lifts his free hand to touch her cheek. "We'll figure it out together, yeah?" She nods, kissing his palm. "I want that. Even if I'm stuck with these changes, I'd rather face them with you than go back to that life." Then she lets out a shaky laugh. "Besides, my chest seems stable now. Maybe it found the size it wanted, though it's definitely more than I ever asked for." He manages a smirk, ignoring the burning pain in his side. "I won't complain. But if you ever want me to enlarge anything else, let me know in advance, okay?" She laughs, a watery sound, pressing her forehead to his. "Shut up, human." There's warmth in her gaze, genuine and unguarded. They remain like that for a while, just breathing each other in. The medic quietly leaves the cabin, giving them privacy. Dax can feel the unspoken weight of everything they've been through pressing against this fragile moment. He's not naive. He knows they still have challenges ahead. Her clan's out there, the Federation's out there. They're broke, wanted, and probably about to step into some black market station with no guarantee of safety. But for the first time, he feels they might have a chance, because they're together. When the pain ebbs enough for him to think straight, he notices how close Viren is. Her chest is practically pressed against his uninjured side, her hair cascading around her shoulders. She's looking at him with those luminous eyes, and he feels a stirring that's both tender and intense. "Are you sure you're well enough?" she whispers, searching his face. "I can feel your tension. This is the sort of moment that sets my body off again, but I don't want to hurt you." He inhales slowly. "I'll manage. But let's not do anything crazy until I'm out of the medical danger zone. The last thing I need is you accidentally finishing me off with your alien superlust." She blushes but doesn't deny the possibility. Instead, she kisses him gently, lingering there with a softness that stands in stark contrast to their earlier, desperate collisions. He kisses back, mindful of his wound, mindful of her precarious biology. It feels like a promise, the start of something new. In the hum of the freighter's life support, in the cramped bunk that smells of antiseptic, they cling to that spark of intimacy. And for once, it doesn't explode in chaos or pain. It's just an honest, slow embrace, overshadowed by everything they've survived. Viren draws back, searching his eyes. When we reach the station, we can look for a medical specialist. Someone who might reverse this or at least help me cope. He nods, touching the glowing lines near her collarbone. We'll do that. And if they can't fix it, we'll deal. I'm not going anywhere. She leans into him, eyes bright. Thank you? The ship shudders as it enters hyperspace. Viren curls up beside him, both of them aware that the future is uncertain, but they have each other. The ache in his side reminds him he's alive, and her warmth against him reminds him he's no longer alone. They drift in companionable silence for a while. Then she exhales, half amusement, half embarrassment. Dax? Yeah? She traces a finger over the bandage on his side. Did you enlarge my chest, human? Her tone is playful now, a gentle tease referencing that first explosive moment between them. He laughs, even though it hurts. No. But if I did, I sure did a damn good job. She leans in, kissing the corner of his mouth, a smile in her eyes. You're impossible. Likewise. They hold each other close, hearts beating in time, the hum of the ship lulling them. Beyond these walls, the galaxy is vast, complicated, and full of danger. But right here, in this quiet moment, they'd found something worth fighting for. She rests her head against his chest, and his arm wraps around her, fingers lacing in her hair. With no clan and no federation, they're free to define their fate, and maybe, just maybe, they'll find love amidst the chaos. They stay like that until sleep claims them. The future can wait. They have earned this peace, however fragile it may be. And as the ship hurtles through hyperspace, leaving the dust of that hostile world behind, Viren's final whispered words drift into Dax's ear like a confession. I couldn't stop blushing, even when I thought you were my enemy. He smiles, eyes closing, the echo of her glow against him, and finally surrenders to rest.